activity going on, and you're thinking, wow, there's been these spikes, happening over the last couple weeks, right? It could be potentially just use, right? But more likely than not, it's either something that is actually, systematically incorrect with maybe a hardware or software integration, or it could be a potential threat. If they don't have that level of awareness, and again, the vocabulary to be able to describe that to your security team, it handcuffs your security team in being able to prevent that. So, I'm going to talk about the phases of cybersecurity. So this is how we think about it, is before, during, and after, right? And unfortunately, a lot of times, I think about it from a training perspective, and I think about it as individuals. Individuals seek certifications that are the most popular, right? Or enables them to be promoted or marketed outside of the organization. What we think about is what's most important to the organization. And really, the way we look at it is, again, these three phases: before, assessing your security risk, analyzing threats, then during is, again, collecting and analyzing some of that intelligence, and the third is response and investigating, right? So there are three phases, and you need to make sure that across your security team that they're prepared for those three phases. And again, out to your IT and IT professionals, they're aware of those three phases and how they participate in those. I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, just sake of time. But assessing security risk and posture. So if you think about this is really about risk management, right? In an organization, you have to understand how much risk is your organization willing to take. We talked about it earlier. I was actually speaking with a leading security person from one of the financial institutions. And I said, why is it that you haven't gone to 2 levels of authentication for my credit card? That would just make it so much easier for all of us. And he said, well, we have people that do financial modeling of risk analysis versus ease of use, and we're willing to take on billions of dollars of fraudulent activity every year because in order to allow people to continually ease of use, to be able to tap my card, to be able to swipe it, be able to sign as opposed to a PIN code, actual physical authentication. They said it's the ease of use. And unless people want, there's other ways to make it easy to use, we'll continue to take billions of dollars of loss every year. I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, you have to realize further inconvenience to me probably twice a year minimum, because I have to get a new credit card, and I have to call you, or your institution. And he said, I understand, but it's still better for all of us. Well, that's the way it is. But it is. It's about risk management. How much risk is your organization willing to take? And understanding that what your posture is going to be against that. If you're in the government or a financial institution or even a retail institution where you may have credit card information, right? It's going to be much higher than if you are somewhere which doesn't contain that information. The ability to analyze threats. I think again, this is the before phase, right? Is really recognizing what's occurring in your environment and preparing your organization prior to what the potential threats are to your organization, right? So it's, the end result is maybe your data is going to be sold on the dark web, right? But that may not be the initial threat. The initial threat is malware, right? It could be, or keyboard logger as it was with us, right? So what are those threats? Collecting the intelligence. I think, this is, on television they make it seem so dynamic and exciting, right? That you're getting all this data and you're able to, go through this and stuff. The fact is, this is painful, right? This takes a lot of diligence, persistence, right, and intelligence to collect the correct data, right? And with the volumes of data that we're creating today, it's just making it ever more complicated, right? There's, beyond terabytes of data that's coming into most organizations every day. But how do we collect the appropriate intelligence through the systems? And again, that goes back to some of those hardware and software solutions, but layering people on top of it. Analyzing the intelligence, right? We have this information, but what do we do with it? And how do you type, that simple log file that we're talking about, that peak in activity? Is that just a hiccup, hardware, software hiccup? Or is it someone that actually is intending to penetrate your infrastructure? The response. The fact is that we talked a little about this with the EU with GDPR. GDPR, and I think more and more organizations or nations, and I think at some point globally, right, we're going to all have a greater community around this. But the fact is that look at when organizations haven't responded in a timely way. Look at Yahoo, right? Yahoo potentially going to lose billions of dollars in their transaction because it took them 2 years to report. Equifax, right? The fact that they reported in a not so timely way and in not a fully transparent way has impacted that organization, right? The CEO is no longer there, and that organization may again be hit with penalties. So it's important that response, and it starts with what's your process, right? An event occurs, what's the assessment of the risk to the organization? Now that you've assessed the risk to the organization, what's your policy on communicating that, right? Who's the stakeholders internally, externally? Is it investors? Is it shareholders? Is it users? Is it your internal employee base? Who's responsible? Who are you responsible to inform? And how do you go about informing them? And that now starts to go beyond your security team as well, right? Now you're starting to think about, do we have public relations professionals? Do we have marketing professionals? Do we have to someone from our executive team or from our government going to have to stand up in front and communicate to someone? And what is it that they should communicate, right? And this is something we really have to think about. Is again, and this is somewhat controversial. But we can employ all the pen testers, all the ethical hackers in the world that we want. The fact is, and Chuck stated earlier, right? It's not going to prevent it from happening. Because where there's one, we take down one, the next one's going to come in, right? And the fact is, they're getting more advanced in their techniques, and they're getting more creative in the way that they're extracting information and money from people. So it's not, and not that we shouldn't have pen testers and ethical hackers, but what is your response? Really, and again, not that you shouldn't focus on prevention. You have to have hardware in place. You have to have software systems in place. You have to have processes. But as part of those processes, how are you going to respond to attacks? And that's how people are going to look at it. I use a great example. Happened 3 years ago. Another time I was impacted in the US. Target, which is a large retail organization, and Home Depot, which is a large home building, again, retail organization. Both were hacked roughly the same time. Target, where I unfortunately had shopped, did not do a good job notifying people. Credit cards were compromised, mine being one of them, because we weren't informed. We kept on going, doing the things that we were doing. Home Depot, their response, with same impact potentially to consumers. Again, credit card information, personal information, but the way they responded had very little impact. So whereas Target lost, millions and millions of dollars, Home Depot probably lost some, but the impact, and also from a brand, was good. Same thing just happened in the UK with the telecom, TalkTalk. They actually wrote off 63 billion pounds from the actual recent hack that they had by a 15-year-old in Northern Ireland. 63 billion pounds due to lost subscribers and long-term overall revenue impact on attracting new subscribers as well as other costs involved in that. So again, the response. The other factor in cybersecurity is your software development engineers. So if you think about it, we're so focused on the network side of it, right? The IT side of it. And as we should be, right? But it's almost, if you think about it, it's thinking about, I kind of think about it as like baking a cake, right? Not sure if everyone in here bakes cakes, but if you do, or you like to eat them at least, you realize that baking a cake, it starts with, are you putting together the proper ingredients? Are they in the right amounts? Is it cooked for the right amount of time, right? And the fact is that instead of just thinking about, hey, I'm going to put icing on it and put it in the storefront to be sold, but if the ingredients are poor or not in the right amounts, it's not going to taste good. And that's almost what we're doing with our software environments, right? The fact is, we talked about this, there are hardware environments, software environments that we're deploying for security solutions. And we're using those, but the fact is that we really aren't training our software development professionals to be secure. So some of the software developer domains we talk about is common secure application development terminology, right? Much like your IT professionals, that Windows administrator, Oracle DBA, they need to know what's the terminology, what is their responsibility in part in your cybersecurity plan. What are their job and process responsibilities? When they're architecting a solution, how are they going to ensure that it's going to be architected in a secure way? What's the risk assessment and management and the application implementation? And so I'll kind of go over these a little more quickly because I know we have limited time here. But some of the terminology is, if I was to walk into a software development house, right? Just if I was to walk out here, probably within a 10-kilometer radius, and I was to hit 2 or 3, and I was to ask them, okay, so what is your software developers? How do you train them? And then we actually had a conversation. Nasima and I had a conversation yesterday, and the organization will go unnamed. But we said, okay, so you're developing mobile app solutions and portals for organizations, for large corporations. And we asked them, we said, so what is your strategy? How do you train your professionals so they're architecting secure solutions? How do they talk to one another about when they're developing code, that they're not just meeting the actual business objectives, right, with features and functionality, but architecting it and developing it in a way that's secure? He didn't have an answer, right? And I think most organizations, whether internal or third-party organizations that you're working with, is probably the same solution, right? What are their responsibilities, right? The fact is, as we talked about earlier, everyone has a role to play in cybersecurity. What is their role? Their role typically is behind the curtain. People don't see it until it manifests itself in a vulnerability in software, right? But this is something where